Got some foam on that one.
Oh, that's okay. That is okay.
I realized I didn't have a beer ready, and then I was like, as soon as I grab a beer, he's gonna say live.
Yeah?
But 'tis the way the show goes.
Oh,
Um,
it's okay. You know, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
yeah. So, how are we doing tonight, Tank?
Oh, pretty good. You know, just looking at how the debate went last night since I didn't watch it.
Yes, I did watch the whole thing, and my wife played Biden bingo, and she's like, "We got to drink when this happens." This, I'm like, I don't play drinking games. I'm an adult. Like, I can get plenty inebriated at my own pace.
Right.
But I did want to cover a little bit of that tonight, and then we're going to talk about some police reforms, some
Mhm.
opinions we have, and before all that, we're going to do the meme cast news. So why don't we fire that up?
Ooh. Here we are. Oh, corn pop.
Corn Pop and Camel Toe heading to the riots.
Oh man.
I mean,
Yeah.
we
All
we could
these are
say this
so
is getting
good.
old.
Yeah.
What?
I said all these are so good with the urban Joe Biden.
Yes, yes. Corn Pop was a bad dude,
Oh
so
my god.
wonder. That's like a is that a high life 40s got going on there? What is that?
I believe it is. Yeah.
Man, I could deal with that.
I almost got there
But
for the
still,
stream tonight. I almost got a couple of those.
Steel Reserve and what was it? Colt 45. What was the other one that we used when we were kids? You get alcohol, you just get a 40, it'd be plenty, right?
You get Old English. It'd either be Old English, High Life, or we got Mickey's a lot too when I was younger.
Oh no, we got the really ghetto stuff, the worst of the worst. All right, well, let's go to the next meme. And I just found this hilarious, but yeah, so they protest in person against voting in person.
Yeah, I don't. You cannot convince me that this it's too dangerous to go vote in person. Stuff is not like a psyop. Like this is ridiculous.
Well, the interesting thing I think is people that do align left are by nature collectivist, and because they're collectivists, they're lemmings, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's an issue with it being overly individualistic as well.
Right.
At some point, you got to listen to people, but uh, if you're just like, oh yeah, the authority is always right, it's weird too because they hate authority. They have so many contradictions. Let's keep moving though. We'll get into some of that. So I know it's a little old with the old Kenosha shooting and all, but this was pretty much the arguments of the left. Quit whining. You have insurance. The bullet was mostly peaceful. 93% of your body wasn't harmed. Liberals, am I doing this right?
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
I was on Reddit this morning and I found, I don't even remember what the subreddit's called, but I just found the subreddit. It was something like, oh, the right is the ones who actually can't meme, and it
Oh
was like
yeah.
all the like the best, some of the best right wing memes that there are. And these leftists are like, they just don't understand, they just don't get it. Like that was their response to every single one.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, no, we understand, we get it. I think you don't understand how to have fun.
Well, to take their side a little bit, this probably could have been two memes. The top part could have been its own meme, and the bottom part could have been its own meme. So I will deduct points for being a little bit wordy, but it's still pretty good.
But if have you seen the left wing memes?
Oh yeah, for
Because they're
sure. Oh yeah,
yeah,
there's
they're
like
horrible.
they'll put like the script to B movie on the whole meme.
Or it's something nobody knows about.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
let's move on to the next one. The next two are actually related. So in the spirit of Christmas, which is coming, we all know it's about to be October, therefore, you know, department stores are going to start selling stuff. We have the Peaceful Protest Action Set from Hasbro.
This one's pretty spicy.
Yeah,
This
but you
is
know
a,
what's spicier
this
is
one
the
will
one
get you.
right at.
Oh yeah, I was say that will get you off. That one will get you off of
Oh, really? You think?
Twitter. Oh my god.
Says OMG, he got rammed. No, it's an F-150. Or it's an F-350. Sorry, not an F-1, but yeah.
Wow. You know, it does upset me. It does upset me a little bit because no automotive company makes a small truck anymore.
I know, man. I know. I agree with you. I like the smaller trucks. Um, you get to worry a lot less about the gas, and you can still haul stuff. You're just not going to be hauling big stuff. But I'd love to have a little truck.
Yeah, it really upset. Like I've seen the one the other day. I think Chevy makes a, I forget what it's called, but it was smaller. But I remember having like a tiny little Mazda pickup truck that I loved. You can't find anything.
Yeah, one of my buddies from high school, he inherited his dad's little Toyota truck, and I mean it was tiny, but we'd cram in there, man. That and like Isuzu used to make them, and all kinds
Yeah.
of brands. But
Ugh.
all right, let's go on to the next memes. These are feminist memes.
Mm.
I only got two of these, but it says this isn't really even a meme, right? It's an article that some lady wrote. It says the end of hisses, whistles, and stares. We need to walk the streets without fear. Oh yeah, first burp.
There we go.
It says 2/3 of women have been sexually harassed just for being in public. But the conversation has exploded, and now something needs to be done. This was in 2014. This was toward the beginning of all this nonsense. Like, I get it. You don't need to catcall girls. Some girls like it, though, like the same girl right here.
Yeah.
Men rarely catcall me anymore. I hate that our culture makes me miss it.
The culture
It's
doesn't
the
make
culture's
you.
fault.
Yeah, the culture doesn't make you miss it. You just have a intrinsic like of being known that you're wanted. I mean, this is
Yes. I had another meme with this sort of, but I dropped it. But it was about it was something like why aren't black women sexually harassed as much in the workplace? And it said, although we don't approve of sexual harassment, it's nice to know that we would be sexually harassed. It's like
what the fuck? Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah, well, that's feminism for you. The next one's a nice wholesome meme though. And it's the old trad wife. Feminism
Right.
is the idea that women are free when they serve their employers, but slaves when they serve their husband and children. And I think that's pretty much on point.
Yeah,
It's a supremacist movement, but yeah.
I've seen a lot of guys talk about, well, people, not just guys, but talk about, you know, this modern culture's got women believing that she's going to be more happy making spreadsheets for a boss than cooking dinner for her family. And that's just ridiculous. Like, well, why would you want to do that?
I think for some women that this actually is true, but I think it's like the smallest percentage of them. And just like most men don't want to be sitting at home all day, when they are, they end up being drug addicts and drunks and stuff,
Yeah.
you know? But all right, I got a couple of Supreme Court nominee memes. Apparently, there were some accusations against Judge Amy Coney Barrett. So the first one is Garth, that she touched me inappropriately in high school party 30 years ago.
When I was loading
But
this
then the
meme
next
up,
one,
I didn't realize that was Garth. I thought that was, what's her name? What this?
she doesn't deserve to be named. We're about to picture her. Anyway,
oh yeah,
so,
her. There we go. That's her.
yeah. So the next one is, and that's when Amy Coney Barrett knocked me to the floor and began scissoring my face and said, "This is MAGA country."
In 1991.
I had me mind one that didn't have that. This is MAGA country, but I found that and I was like, whoa, that's gold. So that one was better. And then of course the next one's a new accuser, and that's when Judge Barrett grabbed me by the you know what? And David Hogg,
Oh my
like,
god! Did you see what happened to him on Twitter?
I don't know, did he eat some food and gain some weight or something?
No, he did
Because
not.
what the
No,
hell?
this is better. So apparently he was. I forget exactly what the context was, but he was criticizing violence, basically. But it had something to do with a protest. I wish I'd pulled it up. But anyway, so and it had something like he was tangentially talking about Black Lives Matter and like the protests and the riots and stuff, and he was like condemning violence, and then he was like backpedaling, like, well, not to say that some of this violence isn't warranted because that's just how people, riots are language of the unheard kind of bullshit. Ended up like completely walking it back, and they were like, this kid who's made his entire shtick on being the victim of a mass shooting and gun violence is now making apologetics for violence.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, he look, man, he's just a lefty. He's brainwashed. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He wasn't even he was at school the day of the shooting. But trust me, guys, I have lived through some crazy stuff in my life. I've lived through a hostage situation. I've been shot at in the Middle East, been bombed. Um, I, you'll live. And I think his problem is he needs to eat some hamburgers because
Yeah.
the kid. I mean, I was pretty skinny going into the military, but by the time I got out of boot camp, I gained about 20 pounds or something like that. I remember seeing a girl I hung out with some friends from high school, and she's like, "Whoa." She's like, Marine Corps made you big. And I'm like, I'm not a big guy. I never was, but just like comparatively, when I was David Hogg skinny, that is. Anyways, let's go to the next meme. A new accuser, Dr. Chris Ford. Amy Comey Barrett assaulted me at a party.
Have you
I
even?
love that
I
one.
haven't even been keeping up with this. What are they accusing her of?
They're not really accusing
Oh,
her of
okay.
anything, but I just thought the memes were funny. The only real thing that's going on with her is that they're essentially saying, well, you're a Christian, and well, look, you adopted these children, and these children are from Haiti, and therefore you're a bad person because you've tokenized your children. Well, isn't this what Hollywood does? Didn't like Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt have like 15 kids they adopted from around the world, as well as every other retard out of Hollywood?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So let's just keep it moving, man. We got tranny memes next. And I will say that I will say the T word because I will say whatever I damn well please. Um so it's a little small on the screen there, but this is literally just clipped from a Twitterati. I think it has since been deleted, but it says transphobes. I would never date a trans girl. That's so gross. Trans girls um aren't attentive or something like that. And it says me. You wish you wish I wanted you. And it's like, no, no. And then the
What?
next one is actually a closer picture of this individual. And it says, I transitioned from a kid my classmates beat up to the woman that's out of their league. Uh, no, you're not a woman, and you're not out of anybody's league. And I know because I've dated lots of hot women. Like,
Oh my
you're
god.
not one of them.
I
I
am.
know. It's just
Like I honestly feel bad for this. Like it's like
all of them, man, because
yeah, like
they're crazy.
yeah, like
Yeah,
no shit. Like I don't even want to. And I hope this person gets. I'm gonna say.
yeah. Well, that's good for you for being a good Christian man and not being a deplorable such as myself. But the next one just brings it
Oh
all
my
around.
god.
You shall not pass.
Oh, I just got it. Oh my god.
All right, let's keep it moving.
It's like I'm staring into an abyss. Okay, yeah, okay. Here we go.
Election memes, please. I just want universal health care. That's progressives in the pit. And then the DNC, it puts the Biden on the skin or gets the Trump again. If you all are too young to have ever seen The Silence of the Lambs, then whatever. I don't want to tell you, but that was great. Puts
Yeah,
the lotion on the skin.
yeah, I've seen a lot of this, like on like lefty Twitter. You know, a lot of the ones that are not going to vote for Biden are basically saying like, "I'm not voting for Biden." Like, or they're getting upset because the DNC is basically saying this, like, you need to support, vote blue no matter who. We have a fascist in office. You're like, I just want healthcare, bro. I don't care about all this.
Right. Yeah, I've seen a lot of the same arguments. So this next sign, I guess someone had in real life. I have no idea. It's not really a meme. It's just someone who doesn't know their place in the world.
God.
It says, I'm a Republican, but I'm not a fool. Biden for president. If you're voting for Biden, you're a fool. Vote for third party, sure, whatever. I mean, I've made that principle stand before myself. I think Trump is not a part of the deep state. I don't know how you think he is after all the attacks against him, unless it's like a really, really covert thing that they're doing,
Right.
you know. But I don't think that they're that organized. And that brings us to the next meme, which kind of essentially sums up this guy's position, which is voting for Biden because you don't like Trump is like eating dog poo because you don't like broccoli. And then in the finer print, it says, keep America great, spay and neuter a liberal.
I like this dude's matching shirt and shorts.
You must really be into the monster.
That's an alpha move right there.
Is he wearing a monster hat? I already took it down.
No, he's not. But he should be. His glasses kind of match. Oh, okay. Next meme.
Next meme. He hits the liver and gets free stuff. So we turned him into a Democrat?
Not even get free stuff. Just promise you stuff they're never going to deliver on.
That's true. Well, they did deliver the Obama phone. I got my Obama phone.
Oh my God. One of the best memes I saw was back before we started the podcast. Some people talking about, Trump gave everybody $1,200. All Obama ever gave us is a flip phone. Like, yeah, okay.
All right, let's go to this. This is a mailer meme. And this is from the this wonderful artist that keeps being circulated. I really should learn the dude's name because I do like his artwork. But you got Granny mailing and the mailbox eats her alive, and then you have Ilhan Omar just picking up that ballot.
It's a mimic like on D&D. A mailbox.
It's funny because the local Minnesota paper, or sorry, not paper, Fox affiliate tried to say that James O'Keefe's what he presented was not real evidence of them exchanging money or voter fraud or anything like that. I'm like, I don't think so. And they had released a video of that specifically. And I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm like besties with James or anything, but I actually do know him. I haven't met him, and he's very like all he thinks about is just being is like the truth and work and just getting out there the stories and showing corruption and exposing it. It's like it's what he lives, man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and another thing, like, people kind of confuse, this is a really stupid, people kind of confuse evidence and proof. Like, that's absolutely evidence. Like, what we saw in that Project Veritas video should at least raise an eyebrow.
Yes.
You can argue it's not enough to say that it's, the voter shit is widespread, but it's unsettling for sure. Anyone who denies that, I don't know.
Well, I mean, if it can swing local elections alone.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the thing I always talk about. There was some years ago, there was a show on CBS, I believe, called The Good Wife. And it was about a woman who was a housewife who was returning to a law firm after being out of the workforce for like 20 years. And her husband ends up running for governor or mayor or something like that. I can't remember. And it takes place like in Chicago, and they're Democrats, of course. Well, they have this whole big episode about election fraud and how they're going to stuff the ballots to get him to win. And they didn't have to end up doing it, even though they tried and scrambled around because he won anyways. But if he wasn't going to win, they were just going to use the fraudulent ballots. So keep in mind, that was a TV show about Democrats in Chicago. CBS, I get you watch CBS News. It's not like they're a right wing outlet, and they overtly talk about it. It was no big deal. You have somebody who aligns with the right say anything about it, and it's like, no, conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
I mean,
we've known about ballot stuffing and stuff that's happened in past elections forever. Like it. I highly doubt every single election in American history has been as honest as it could be. I guess is what I'll say. And that's
well,
probably
we know
and it probably
dead
comes
people
from
vote.
yeah, and it probably comes from both. Like I'm sure every party's been guilty of it. I mean, you know,
Oh, I have no doubt.
yeah, you know, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. So just
But if you get caught, you ain't
Yeah.
trying hard enough. That's all that matters.
But you know, anyway,
All right, next meme, man. Next meme. That's Nancy Pelosi as a Catholic. And then I have no idea what this cat thing's about, but you misspelled alcoholic. Have you ever watched the United Front on
No.
YouTube?
no.
Oh man, they're like little cartoons, and they're political cartoons, and they always have Nancy Pelosi like slurring and spitting everywhere, and they have AOC. She runs around with like a helmet on her head, and her eyes are like going crazy. It's hilarious. Anyways, next one, so we can wrap up here and get on with the show. From Ron DeSantis of the governor of Florida, it says CDC recently updates estimated infected fatality rates for the COOF. Here are the updated survival rates by age group. And this is less so of a meme, just some facts. Showing that this thing is really not that lethal, except for a certain age group, you know. But the main thing that I wanted was the meme after this, which says, we're going to need a bigger hoax.
Yeah, it's this virus is it's crazy. I can't do it well, I guess I'm gonna have to do it because we live in a crazy world, but I don't know.
I'm
like,
pretty much done with the mask thing completely. Like,
well, I mean, yeah, you know,
people don't care. It's
yeah,
like, all right.
yeah. Anyway, I'm not gonna get off on that tangent.
All right, Tank. This is the last one, and this relates directly toward one of the subjects we're going to talk about tonight, and that is Chris Wallace carrying Joe Biden last night in the election. Don't worry, I got you, man. Or as Arnold Schwarzenegger once said, "Run, get to the chopper."
Right. Oh, me.
All right.
We're
All right. Play that memecast news sounder, and let's get to it.
And that has been the memes for this week.
Oh, yes, another 20 minutes wasted of your life.
You never get it back.
But what would you rather be doing right now? It's not like anybody's watching us. I mean, you might be watching the replays, so
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, the elections were really interesting. Or sorry, the election, the election debate, the presidential debate, were really interesting. Joe Biden actually surprised me, and that he did rather well. Now, I don't think he did great. I don't think he did perfect. I don't think he did phenomenal. I don't think he did what all the polls are saying, like he won. I think it was a net neutral debate, actually. But he did rather well compared to what I thought he might do. But I think a lot of that was because Chris Wallace carried him. And we were talking before the show, in one instance specifically, Trump was talking about law and order, and he said, well, what police agencies back you? And he's like, name one. Trump was like, name one police agency that backs you. And he's like, Biden's like, well, we don't have time for that. We don't have time. And then Chris Wallace came in. It's like, what do you mean you don't have time to name one singular law enforcement agency? Like, yeah, okay, old man. And I know Trump's old too, but he's definitely not as in bad a shape as Biden. And the other thing is Biden, I thought Trump might do this, but I think he was trying to push his buttons the whole time to get him mad, to take that mask off, and he did. He did get mad, but this is nothing new. Like, we've seen Biden do this. Like, look fat, or well, go vote for Trump then. Telling people that are trying to support him to go vote for Trump because of one issue.
Yeah.
And Trump doesn't do that. Trump does not do that at all. So if the choice is between Biden and Trump, and people are saying we don't like Trump's attitude, please explain to me how Biden's is any better. Especially when he's calling him a clown, he's getting mad at him, he's snarling at him. And I think all that's because he's demented, but that's another issue, I guess. You know, Joe Biden's never been much of a politician. He's always been he's a very well documented liar. So he starts calling President Trump a liar. It's like, oh, okay, like your word means anything?
Yeah. I didn't watch the debate because politics are fake and gay, but I did watch a little highlight reel, and you're right. Biden did not sound that bad, but for me, he just looked bad. Like his complexion was weird. I don't know, like if they did some weird makeup to him or whatever. I mean, Trump did look fantastic himself, but he looked like mummified or something. I don't know. He looked like kind of sickly. But yeah, debates are debates. I don't think anyone who's really paying attention thinks that debates are going to change anyone's mind.
They do on occasion when people still have reservations, but I don't know how you can be in this polarized atmosphere.
Yeah.
Reserving anything at this point in time.
And that's the only reason why I was even interested in the debates at all. Is that for me they're almost like a wrestling match, like a pro wrestling match.
Well, Trump is in the WWE Hall of Fame.
Yeah, but it's that sort of thing. They come out, they talk shit, and we all know that it's all a show, and we just go along with it because it's fun.
To some degree, but I honestly think that a lot of these people actually hate Donald Trump because he's not one of them.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I think they see and despise him, just like they despise you and I because we don't believe in their giant federal state apparatus that gets to dictate everything in your life, including, if you how many flushes you get to have a day. And that's really what the world's going towards, folks. If you don't understand that, sorry, you got your eyes closed. You might think that I'm being hyperbolic about this, but the reality is that the UN dictates all of our policies, and especially toward the climate and whatever else. And if you read what they say, we're going to have a AOC Greta Thunberg society, and it's not going to be very fun. It's not going to be like the way the world was. And we can make excuses like, oh, it's going to save the earth. But I promise you, long after we are here, the earth will be here, at least from a naturalist perspective. I believe otherwise, certain things. But in any case, yeah, they're one of the big deals too. I mentioned to you before the stream was Biden essentially just called out fake news headlines, and those were his accusations towards Trump. So he mentioned the $750 that Trump paid 2 years in a row in taxes, except for the New York Times article debunks that within its own article. That Trump actually paid out millions, and there was a residual that he had to pay because they were holding over that money, and that was $750.
Yeah.
So it was stuff like that, or the Charlottesville thing. Well, he said good people on both sides. Okay, well, there were good people on both sides, and I don't care who you are. You can argue that with me all day. I watch the stuff. I'm so hyper aware of all the stuff. I watch so much from so many different angles, from so many different reporters, from people on the ground. Not everyone there was there as some sort of white supremacist. Now, there were people of like the Richard Spencer ilk who were there. And there were people of the Antifa side that were there. But Trump didn't say good people on both sides out of nowhere. He also said, I condemn white supremacy. I condemn neo-Nazis. I condemn this and that. And then there were just a lot of questions from Chris Wallace making arguments for Biden almost. He got softballed a lot, I felt. And I mean, Trump knew it was going to be unfair. And I think that's why he was bullish and started talking over him. It was like, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. That didn't happen. That kind of stuff that he does. So
Yeah, and there was some controversy about the Proud Boys or something like that.
okay, so according to Tim Pool, he actually had a friend message him, I guess an old friend from Chicago, and said, who's the Proud Boys? I know who the Proud Boys are. They're a fraternity of guys, of friends of Gavin McInnes they call themselves American chauvinist. And if you don't know what chauvinist means, folks, it just means you're a patriot. That's all that word means. It's not, you chauvinist pig, like the old feminist thing, where it has a bad connotation. It's okay to be proud of the roots and the laws of your country, of the spirit of your country. We don't always live up to that spirit, but that's all the Proud Boys are. And they were willingly going out and protecting people from Antifa, but they weren't necessarily starting fights. And they're considered a white supremacist group. Joe Biden named them, and I felt like Trump did poor on this. But they said, condemn white supremacy. Chris Wallace said this, and Trump said, sure. Who do you want me to name? He's condemned white supremacy in the past. The problem isn't white supremacy, which is why Trump turned it immediately, flipped it on its head, and said, but what about the left? Because they are supremacists, folks. The feminists are supremacists. BLM are supremacists. Antifa, in my mind, are white supremacists. They're just not the kind that we traditionally think of as the neo-Nazis. So they literally believe that white people are better than black people. Therefore, black people need to have certain advantages and white people certain disadvantages. Well, guys, that's supremacy. It's pretty simple. But yeah, Biden said, the Proud Boys, and Trump said, fine, the Proud Boys. He's like, he's like, stand down and stand by or whatever. And he kind of clarified that today. He was saying, no, I told him to stand down and stand by, like let law enforcement take care of it. But a lot of people don't know who the Proud Boys are. A lot of people who think they know what they're talking about think that Antifa isn't an actual group or organization. Joe Biden said that. And Trump kept pushing him, which seemed to be his strategy, to push him to disavow the far left or the moderate left, one way or the other. And I was watching Dan Bongino today. He was saying that Trump's not actually looking to gain any more voters. His strategy is just to rally his base and let the left eat the left. And that might be true.
Yeah.
And then other perspectives, again, for me, I thought it was a net neutral debate. But other perspectives I heard were essentially that Trump will do better in the second and third debates if they happen. The interesting thing is the mainstream media are now saying, well, Biden shouldn't debate him again. The same people saying that Biden shouldn't have debated Trump in the first place. That's silly. It's completely silly.
Yeah,
so, I don't know.
they need to have it on Joe Rogan. I'd be down for that. I'd probably watch that one.
That would be awesome, except for Rogan would constantly he's going to constantly side with Biden. Now, he might not, but I've seen him do this. When he has conservatives on, he
Mm-hmm.
can't do this with someone like Shapiro, and he can't do this with
Right.
somebody like Jordan Peterson. And I'm not a huge fan, but when he had Candace Owen on, Candace Owens was kind of bullied by him.
Yeah.
And when he
Crowder
had
was
Stephen,
too.
yeah, I was about to say that when
Yeah.
Stephen Crowder was on, he
Yeah.
was kind of bullied by him.
Yeah.
And, and, not the second time he was on though, but yeah. And I'm not like, I don't agree. I enjoy Crowder. Like as far as a show, he is funny. I like his skits. He does provide some news content. I don't think his perspectives are always that great. Um, but regardless, like these people on the left, they're like, "Oh no, but this isn't true, and that's not true." And it's like, well, as I told my wife, the famous quote from Ronald Reagan: "You have to forgive our liberal friends because they know so much that isn't true." You know, it's not. It's not that they're wrong, it's that they know so much that isn't true. And that is true for the most part. So I don't know, man. We can opine on this for a long while. I just thought we would kind of cover it, but there's so many people talking about it. I did a quick shots today on All Minus One. That's first plug today. All Minus One over on YouTube. That would be my main channel or my recorded show, whatever the hell you want to call it. But yeah, I did just my quick take on this. It's not much different than what I'm talking about right now. Um, Other than I think that we actually have a choice for once in
Yeah.
like 30 years since basically Ronald Reagan, in my opinion, we have a choice between presidents. It's amazing.
Well, yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, my big thing with presidents in the past was I'm more concerned with well, more concerned, but foreign policy is a big deal to me. I think the more libertarian side that will criticize this election will say, oh, well, both they're both the same, really. Well, I would have said that too for Bush and Obama because their foreign policy was so similar. But I think that Trump's actually tried to get us out of some of these countries, and I appreciate that. So really, that's enough for me to vote for Trump on top of. But yeah, I
that's
think you're
that,
right.
that foreign policy is the biggest reason why
Yeah,
for me. And there's some other stuff, but the biggest thing is look at who supports them. Look at who backs who. And donations usually come from the same corporations. And it doesn't matter if they're Republican or Democrat. Trump is something different. Another reason why I support him is because the left and the media and part of the right hate him so much. So anyone who's saying that, well, yeah, well, Trump's just in bed with them, the deep state, like on our show we did Saturday, where this guy says in the chat, he's clearly pushing the same agenda as the deep state. And maybe he's not talking about Trump there, but I'm pretty sure he is. And he's like, Venezuela, Iran. He was picked to handle the bankrupting and collapse of America. No chance of change there. Da, da, da. Well, I don't know what you're talking about because how how do they pick Trump to bankrupt America when America is in a stronger position of power than it's ever been in on the world stage without bombing and wars? Like I get from like the very Ron Paulian type side, the Austrian economic side, from like the Peter Schiffs and all, that yeah, the monetary policy hasn't changed that much. Okay, but Trump Trump can't do that, guys. That's Congress. Congress does that. Trump can only do so much. And frankly, I don't like all the executive orders and all that stuff. I usually am very much against that, but the nation is so far gone and so far removed from constitutionalism. And if you see, we were talking before the show, if you see someone like Mitt Romney against Donald Trump and he was supposed to be the choice between him and Obama, or John McCain, who is very much against Trump, and he was supposed to be the choice between him and Obama, Like, to quote Joe Biden, come on, man.
Okay, so we actually had a topic that we're gonna talk about, right, for tonight.
Yeah. I know that's tedious. So tonight, the greater topic we want to speak of is something we touched on uh last week, and that is the training of police, the lack of training, the things that maybe potentially could be implemented in the police departments to improve our American policing system. So that's pretty much it, right?
Right. Yeah. I think it's an important topic to talk about because how do I want to word this? So obviously, I don't agree with a lot of this defund the police bullshit and all that, but I do think there's some. If you want to look for a case of actual police brutality, of actual miscarriages of justice, I don't think they're that hard to find. Waco and Ruby Ridge and such being like some of the more famous ones that people forgot about recently. Um, it's an issue for sure, and I think as we were talking last week, that me and you kind of both agree that um, we both have worked in like law enforcement adjacent kind of fields, and we've kind of seen it firsthand, and I think we both agree that there's some issues with law enforcement departments that really do need to be fixed. Um, that really aren't getting discussed. I don't see them getting discussed. I don't see you got one side that like would just defend police officers no matter what, and that is what it is. And then you've got another side that will condemn police officers no matter what. And really, what's going on is you have a huge bureaucracy usually that's lagging everything down and has, you know, different goals than just law enforcement, basically.
Well, it's the problem of authority, as always. You have to decentralize, folks. If you want a stable society, you need to decentralize it. And within law enforcement, from my perspective, or security or anything else, or even the military when I was in the Marine Corps, every single issue we always had was because of those who were in authority not decentralizing, not listening to their men, and not listening to the people on the ground, not addressing problems actively, not being good leaders, and being people who like power. Now, one thing that I feel like I am on almost everything is um I'm very not anti-authority per se, but authoritarian. I don't like bullies. It is very much in my personality. It's just in my blood. And I when I was little, man, elementary school, a bully be picking on a kid and I'd be the guy to get in the middle of it. And I was usually the smallest kid too. It didn't matter. I don't like bullies. And I see leadership for most people as a way to gain power and authority so they can bully others. And I think that's a big problem within law enforcement, not just in the leadership itself, but amongst also people that go into law enforcement. I mean, hell, we see this in the church. We see this in religion. People want to be well respected, well known. They want to be thought of as well. Well, I'll become a minister. Well, do you really have a gift, or are you really inspired by God for this? Are you really good at it? Or do you just think this is what you should be doing? And as for my career, I got sucked into it more or less. But whether it was from the sheriff to the warden to whomever else, we just had horrible leadership. And anybody who would be good leaders, they demoralized to the point where they didn't want to try and be leaders. Right before I left, I took a promotional test, and the candidate pool was like out of 6 people. It was just absolutely abysmal because nobody wanted to take the test. They were so demoralized. And I worked there for 13 years. And the person they hired, or they promoted was not the best qualified person. In fact, this person had been in a lot of trouble over some very shady stuff over the years. What um what they did though is they chose the person who was willing to go to the 4 to midnight shift, because we had set shifts, and the 4 to midnight shift is usually the crappiest if you have a family. I myself could not take it because I have full custody of my daughter and I would never see my daughter, and that just, it wasn't possible. So for me, it was daylight or midnight. I had to work one or the other. And I worked midnights because my parents would watch my daughter overnight, but I would be with my daughter after school, that kind of stuff. If I worked 4 to midnight, when would I see her? She'd get home from school right before I left for work, and then, I could get her up in the morning for school, but that would be it. And my parents already helped me out enough. I wasn't asking them to raise anybody. But that's not a reason to promote somebody, um, uh, because they're the only one. Like, you, as a leader, you need to re-examine your promotional policies at that point, and you need to look at this and say, well, wait a minute, who are we promoting? And the guy that they promoted, I never really had any problem with, but a lot of guys would, that I worked with, would pick on him and stuff. And one of the first things he said, "Oh yeah, now that I'm promoted, you guys are going to get it now. Watch out." So he was motivated by vengeance, and that happens because there's no leadership in the first place. There's no good leadership in the first place. There's all kinds of issues that we can get into on this, which I want to talk about, but that's my take on that. So I don't know. What you got? Anything else on that, Tank?
Something that you brought up. You're talking about that people that go into these types of professions, sometimes they can be bullies, and I think that's true. But I think more often than not, like if you were to ask me, well, I'll just pose this question to you: the average guy that goes into law enforcement, or I'll say law enforcement adjacent, that includes like sheriff's deputies or corrections or whatever. What kind of person is this guy? What do you think? You tell me what you think.
Well, it
Well, no,
depends.
let me rephrase that. Not what kind of person is he? Why did he want to do that job?
Right. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
It depends. So I have a buddy who works at a local city police agency, and I knew him before he was a cop. And he was going to school, went to the University of Maryland and all that stuff, got a criminal justice degree. He literally became a cop, in his words, because he wanted to help people. That's not everybody that becomes a cop, though, or goes into these fields. Me, I wanted nothing to do with it. Why did I get into corrections? Why did I work for a sheriff's department? Because I needed a job, and that's really common with a lot of people. Um, there are a percentage of people, though, who want the power and the authority, and you can see that the difference between officer friendly and officer badass, right? The guy that walks up to the car and pulls you over and he's like, "Hey, sir, how you doing today? I hate to have to pull you over, but you were going a little fast, blah blah blah." Versus the guy that's like, "License and registration. You mind telling me why you think I pulled you over?" Da 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 da. And the completely different approaches. And I think a lot of that comes down to leadership. And another thing about the power issue is I think that often comes out of people who feel like they're powerless.
Yeah.
And so people who think that they're powerless wish to seek out things that they think they can do. I've also seen it before with hirees where they it's some sort of challenge to them. Can I do this? You know, um, frankly, I went in the Marine Corps, I went in the infantry, security forces, did all that stuff because I wanted to train because I like training. I like shooting guns and blowing stuff up. So I've done martial arts for so long. Um, I like the camaraderie of that kind of stuff. I like choking buddies out and get punched in the face and whatever else. How many times I've gone to a seminar and I've come back home and I'm just covered. I have to take a photo because I'm like covered in bruises or whatever. So I'm weird. I'm not wired right, but but nobody, almost nobody I knew that I worked with did training on their own either. So, like I said, I'm a different type.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't know, man.
So,
Like, what do you think people go in for?
so yeah, so admitting there is a spectrum.
Yeah.
So what I'm about to say is not. I'm not saying it's representative for everyone, but I think this is where I disagree with like a lot of people on the right who are very like back the blue and that sort of thing. Is that they get this impression that everyone becomes a police officer because they want to help people. Some do for sure, but there's lots of ways to help people that don't involve that. I think most people go into these kind of jobs because I'll say it like this: it pays $2 more than a sheet metal factory, and you get discounts at the grocery store. Like it's a job with automatic prestige, sort of, and it's not necessarily terribly paying. You don't necessarily have to have like a lot of education or anything. And I'm not saying that's bad. I don't think that everybody needs a bunch of education, but it's not that bad of a job, and a lot of dudes just go into it because they're regular dudes and they're looking for something to do.
Well, it depends. Like, if you live in a rural
Yeah,
county, if you're a patrol deputy or something like that, you're probably not going to respond to a lot of calls. You're not going to make
yeah,
hardly any arrests. You're just going
yeah,
to write a few tickets. That's going to be your job.
yeah.
Corrections is different. Um, Corrections, you're dealing with just crappy people all the time, and not all of them are crappy. Like, you build your relationships with the people, but I mean, the fact of the matter is some of them see you as a human being, know you're just doing a job, and some of them think of you as the enemy straight up.
Hmm.
And I know new correctional officers that saw the inmates as the enemy as well.
Yeah.
I never looked at it like that because I see the humanity in everybody. But it yeah, it is just a job, and that's what I said, man. I took it because it was just a job. I never thought that I would be there for so long. I never intended to be there for so long. I actually almost worked at a courthouse briefly afterward, but my ex-wife kind of ruined my chances for that. Um, so that's a whole another story that I'll say for you and I in private. But essentially, I had it after the first year. I was going to go work at another sheriff's department at a courthouse as security, and that would have been a really nice 9 to 5, holidays and weekends off kind of job, and and a big pay raise for me at the time. And she literally screwed it up. So, um, but yeah, it, it's like I said, I went in the military to go train, to go learn things, to go do this and that. I really liked it. I thought I was going to stay in for life. I got out more or less. The biggest personal reason for me, there were a couple things with like promotions and other stuff. I got screwed over a lot the last year and a half that I was in with some stuff. I probably would have gotten my next promotion soon, but the score jumped up, and I actually should have made it when I was eligible, but somebody didn't do some paperwork right, so there were some things there. And then I didn't date a lot when I was in the military. And I'm just not a guy that doesn't do well unless I have, you know, a woman around. And I hate to say that because, I'm not like, I need a girl all the time, but I really enjoy female companionship, and the military can be lonely, man. Can be very lonely.
Yeah.
So those are the major reasons why I got out, and I consider going back in. Didn't go back in because I had my daughter, and I didn't want to come back as a cripple or be dead, and wasn't sure if her mom was going to take care of her, that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, you're right. It is a job. It's a stable job. It's a pretty secure job unless you're doing something really wrong. I've seen that side of things too. Really corrupt people. People bring in drugs and whatever
Oh yeah.
else.
And
Where I worked, smaller jail, easy to catch.
mhm.
Big jails, not so much.
And
Yep.
that's where I think you have to start when you're talking about problems with policing and in communities is that it's a force. Some people do it to help people. Some people are absolute shit. Some people are are smart, and some people are not. It's like any other workplace. The difference is that when these guys make mistakes, especially like your beat cops, it can cause people to die. I mean, I think that's a reality. And that's not just the guys that shot the Weaver family in Ruby Ridge were not just regular beat cops. They were elite guys, and they still murdered some people. So it's a thing that happens.
Killed the dude's wife and baby while
Yeah,
trying to shoot at him and his son,
yeah,
and that's because they didn't know. Uh, they didn't know what was behind him. They couldn't see
right,
into the house, and yeah, and they shouldn't have done that though.
yeah,
But that's where I say that's an issue of leadership. So I think one of the people I actually meant to grab this book for today, but I forgot to grab it. But one of the people that has covered this really well that I know um, is this guy named Mike Malpez. Now, Mike Malpass is a former like 5-time heavyweight kickboxing champ. He knows guys like Randy Couture. Pretty sure he was a sparring partner for Buster Douglas. Excuse me, for the lead up to the Tyson fight. And Mike's just this really all around really nice guy, very funny, has great stories. Been a cop for like I don't know 25, 30 years, and through through martial arts certification I have, he is essentially affiliated with the group and would teach these classes. And with the main guy, Kevin Sikors, um, and Mike Malpez developed this use of force continuum and training for Arizona, for Phoenix specifically. And they supposedly reduced their use of force complaints by 90% or something like that. Now, this was a few years back. And the main thing that they talk about is the mental processes and how to de-escalate things and how to de-escalate yourself, how to deal with the stress, all that kind of stuff, as well as the martial practice. The actual physical practice is very important. Mike Malpez's book is called Taming the Serpent. And I wish I would have grabbed it because I've shown people a picture of it. But it is a lot of neuroscience and just brilliant solutions for modern law enforcement. I talked to my command about getting Mike to train us. I talked to Mike personally. It was like, Mike, would you come out and train us, do whatever? He's like, yeah, man, I'd love to work with your department. Nope, nope, no funds, won't do this, won't do that. Yet the same people who are the leaders are complaining to us constantly about our use of force. Be careful of our use of force. So we had railing when I started in the jail for the first couple of years that went only halfway up to about your waist. And we had deputies almost thrown over that railing. This is on the upper tier numerous times. Nothing happened. An inmate jumped off while we were getting ready to transport them down to DOC, the Department of Corrections, that is the Maryland State Prison System. And an inmate jumped off, broke his ankle because he thought he wasn't going to have to go down to the state prison system. Well, they patched him up, sent him to the hospital, did cast it up, whatever, and sent him anyways, of course. Within a month, railings were up in every single unit in the jail because they were more concerned with law enforcement than here. My wife's bringing me the book, so thank you, baby. So this is Taming the Serpent. This would be a great book for law enforcement personnel, people to get a hold of. But anyways, they were more concerned with the lawsuit potential liability that this inmate would jump off the rail than if their own people, their own staff were protected. And that's another issue because usually the staff will not sue their leadership. It does happen, but it doesn't happen a lot. Another person I would say who I think did a really great job on Joe Rogan's podcast was Jocko Willink. And everything Jocko said, I pretty much agreed with. You need more regular psyche evals. You need more training. You need more time to de-stress. I worked a very old schedule that almost no department works anymore of 6 days on, 2 days off rotating. You are burnt out, my friends, within 4 weeks. You are, and that's only an 8-hour shift, but then there's constantly overtime. Now, they didn't normally mandate us. It happened on occasion, but you constantly have overtime. You want to work that overtime if you want some extra money, help your family out or whatever. But if you're a guy like me who was single for, I mean, what, 9 years, and I have a little girl. I mean, I was dating and stuff, but it doesn't make it easy to have relationships with people. You know, when your girlfriend has a little a little calendar book that with all your days off marked for the next year or whatever, and you have to give it to her so she knows when you're working or not because your schedule's that freaking confusing. There's just stuff like that people don't think or consider, and then you have to realize you're putting up with people who are real jerks all day long. People that'll throw like urine and feces at you. No, fortunately, the whole time I worked, many guys I saw uh, had that happen to. It never happened to me, not once. But maybe that's because I always made it clear that I would probably kill whoever did that to me. I don't know. Um, I'll lose my job, man. I don't care. Yeah, you know. But I don't think like that anymore either. So I was a different person then, I would say to some degree. But look, there's just there's all these factors people don't see. There's all these horrible things that police see, that go through. And then you look at corrections, it's even more different because depending on how well the facilities run, depending on what state it's in, they're they're dealing with a high level of stress. People who work in law enforcement have a high rate of suicide and death after retirement as well. So there's just a lot of factors that and then there's the shift work aspect of it too, because that's a stressful thing. And they have a high divorce rate. Lot of issues there. These people are so quick to judge, and well, I'm not a liberal, or well, I'm a classical liberal, but I'm not a progressive or a regressive, as Kizza was trying to encourage us to use the terminology. I don't think you just throw money at stuff down an endless pit. But there are solutions that do require some money, and we need more staffing, more training. Um, you know, I think people in law enforcement need to be paid more money, a lot more money, and you'll get a higher caliber individual. I've worked with some real idiots, like really dumb people, and it's like you might not need a college degree or anything like that, but you should probably have military. And I've met a lot of dumb people too that have college degrees. I've met some dumb as a rock people that have master degrees. So I don't see that college is any sort of measure.
Yeah,
But I don't know, bud. Like, what do you got on that?
yeah, I think you're right. So I'm definitely not one of these defund the police kind of guys, but a lot of people are saying, actually, you need more funding police if you want to be better trained. Well, yes and no. Because really, when people say, "Oh, law enforcement needs more training," if you're going to go down that route, what that means is some bureaucrats going to come up with some kind of busy classroom work for, law enforcement officials to do that probably isn't necessary. In my opinion, law enforcement needs to spend like 20% of their time training their tactics, like whatever they may be, de-escalation, hand to hand, verbal judo, however you want to talk about it. Then they spend a lot more time doing that. Because I know for a lot of law enforcement agencies that I've kind of been in contact with, they'll train their like self defense and stuff like once a year. Um,
Yeah, that was what we did.
yeah, and anyone who's ever done like any martial arts knows that you can't train it just once a year if you want to be proficient at it. Um, guys that do jujitsu as a hobby do it 3 times a week. Uh, so it's just a ridiculous. The whole thing is a ridiculous concept. Some bureaucrat, probably with a master's degree, is probably not that smart, got some job working for some state bureaucracy, and it lands on his desk. Hey, we need a self defense program for correctional officers or whatever. And he goes, well, okay. And he basically comes up with this karate class for these guys to take once a year.
Right.
And then he
Have you ever heard of
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, have you ever heard in your jujitsu training, um, different people teach different ways. There's different things out there. But have you ever heard of tree theory when it comes to like taking someone down or anything like that?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, tree theory is simply this within martial arts is that if the trunk of the tree, that is your body, right? If that is the strongest part, why would you try and pull the tree down by a little tiny branch? So by the finger or something like that. Most modern law enforcement teaches wrist locks.
Oh yeah.
They don't, which are like nearly impossible to put on people. If you're going to do a wrist lock, folks, you're doing it to break someone's wrist immediately.
Yeah.
That's the point of it. That goes back to ancient combat style jujitsu. Um, you wrist locks are almost useless unless you're grappling with somebody and have a very tight position, and then you can compress that wrist. There are some instances where I've actually used wrist locks before, but they just don't work well because you know what people do?
Yeah. Yeah.
They flail around, they move, they fight back. So this idea is that you go toward the body, the trunk, whatever, or you might take out the legs
Yeah.
or whatever else. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because the training is completely opposite to that. And they're like, well, it's too dangerous because the guy might go smack his head off the pavement.
Yeah.
This is why I brought up Mike Malpaz and Kevin Sikors because what they teach is essentially a body harness. So Tank should know what a harness is, but basically you have an over under grip on a person, and you want to get behind them, and you do a movement that basically breaks their structure, and you take them down gently to the ground, and then you can do what you need to do by placing weight on their body or not. Another thing that's not taught often is team tactics.
Yeah.
Look at I can never remember the gentleman's name that was well, he wasn't a gentleman, but the guy's name that was shot in Atlanta during that struggle with the police. But that everyone's nearly forgotten about, by the way. I haven't heard much about it. You still hear Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, but never
Mhm.
that dude. Um, and everyone's nearly forgot about Ahmaud Arbery as well. But in any case, those two guys, those two cops, did not know what they were doing. They had no weight on the guy. They would have been perfectly justified, by the way, to strike that guy in any use of force continuum. Um, and that's another thing is that law enforcement doesn't allow strikes because of the potential lethality of it. Like they allow strikes, but they don't like strikes, and they don't like the imagery of it, people in the streets, and that's a problem because I can tell you there are many times where I've just thigh kicked somebody, like did did a round kick straight to their thigh, and they dropped to their knee, and that was it. Um, Sometimes you don't need that much force, but if my option is something like that versus let me struggle with you and then get to a position where you're dominating me, you know, it's a whole nother deal. And that's the issue too with chokes, man. I think blood chokes should be allowed 100% in law enforcement. That's the safest, most humane way you can put somebody down is through a blood choke. If I punch you in the head, you're going to suffer brain damage. If I choke you out, you might barely, sort of, but I guarantee you it's not going to be as bad as you having a concussion.
Oh
I can
yeah. Well, I
assure you.
mean, 11-year-olds get choked out in jiu-jitsu competitions every day. You know, it's nothing. Nothing is completely safe. You know, but a lot of these guys are so worried about looking bad on camera or something like that that they don't want to teach them anything effective. So cops, you know, they spend their once a year they go to their karate class. They don't remember it anyway, and even if they did remember it, it's terrible. And then it doesn't work because it can't work, and then they get scared and shoot somebody. That's
Yeah.
that's
Well,
a
you know, my
that's a
wife in
shit
the
show.
chat saying too, she left a message saying, you know, they don't need to enforce so many stupid laws, which
Oh
I
yeah,
also
for
agree
sure.
with.
Yeah, yeah,
Like the
absolutely.
drug war is a huge one, man. Like people can talk about, oh, there'll be I've had this conversation before with people, and they're like, "Well, I don't want to go to Sheets," and Sheets is like a local gas station
Mm.
food place around this region. But they're like, "I don't want to go to Sheets and um, you know, be in there with crackheads because drugs are illegal." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Every time I walk in the Sheets, I see someone freaking, you know, cracked out of their mind. Like, or depending on which one you go to, or what parts of town or whatever. But I'm like, what what are you talking about? Like, you're already seeing that. You're walking around, you're seeing people high all the time. You don't even know it. They're
Yeah.
probably just going to leave you alone. That's not what legalizing drugs does. What it actually all it does is it destroys the black market, and it you know there's there's over policing of a lot of stuff. And I'll tell you another thing is that yeah, we have problems with like drinking and driving and all, but it hasn't disappeared. It isn't gone.
Oh,
Still exists,
yeah,
even though they do enforcement stuff. And I mean, almost anybody that ever goes out anywhere, you're drinking and driving, folks.
yeah.
Like I know, I've taken the people in. I know I've known people that get DUIs, DWIs. Like if a cop pulls you over and he smells that, and you've had 2 drinks, unless you have like a really great liver or you're a really big guy, you're guilty. I can promise you. And so we over police a lot of things. I had a guy I trained with from Serbia tell me that he was talking about, you know what they do over there when you drink, when people drink and drive? He's like, the person who's drunk drives in the middle of the road, and when someone comes up behind them, they flash their lights, and then the other person pulls over to the side, and then they just pass on. So the drunk driver just pulls over the side and lets them go. And don't get me wrong, I get the idea that like kids could be running out in the streets where I don't know what kids are running around out in the middle of the street at like 12 at night or 2 a.m. or something like that. But my point is, and so much about drinking and driving is just that we have a lot of enforcement of laws that could probably be a little bit less so, a little bit less strict. And drinking and driving specifically is one that they've kind of, even though the percentages are lower as far as what they can bust you on, the enforcement of it isn't as high as you would think it would be. Um, and the drug war though is a similar kind of situation where yeah, I don't want people necessarily getting their heroin from like some sort of heroin dispensary or something like that, but it's also less likely that you're going to cause all the gang crime and all the other trickle effect things, the unintended consequences, because you've regulated it. And I'm not really seeing that any of the data, at least for marijuana, for instance, and the states that have legalized it, any of the data is suggesting it's made the world any more dangerous. Um, but yeah, anyways.
But yeah, no, you bring up a good point about over policing is definitely a part of it. The whole Randy Weaver, Ruby Ridge shooting was because he supposedly sawed off a shotgun like a 16th of an inch too short. Um, and the ATF found out about it or whatever.
And the dude lived in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So who was he
Yeah.
bothering?
So
Who
I
was he
mean,
bothering?
yeah. I mean, what are you worried about? This of course is one of those cases that the police brutality protesters don't talk about. But you know, so you've got a matter of over policing. You've got a matter of you know poorly trained police officers or law enforcement in general. You've got a system set in place that is a huge bureaucracy that has no way of correcting itself. Um, and it's really just a shit show. It's everything that could go wrong with this system is wrong. Um, and I don't really know how to. I mean, I have a lot of theories on how you could fix training aspect, but you've got to get these guys that sign the paperwork in the state to go along with it, and they're not going to as long as they keep treating, you know, training for police officers like a karate class. It's just not going to happen.
Well, and
Uh,
how much money do they make? How much money do those politicians make?
too much, for sure.
A lot of them.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of them. I mean, yeah, the reality is that the the police should be training probably 3 or 4 times a week, at least an hour a day. And I mean, not just one random day of training a week or whatever. I mean, 3 or 4 days a week because you get uh
Mm.
better training stimulus that way, and it's more consistent than just one big block session. when I was in a security force unit in the Marine Corps, we had an indoor shoot house built on base, and we would get off of guard duty, 8 hours of guard duty of the TACAMA aircraft that we guarded, and then we would go to the shoot house and do an hour of drills, of magazine reloads, transition drills from rifle to sidearm, from kneeling to standing to multiple target drills, all that stuff. When you have a squad of Marines, 12 guys, not a big deal. Not a big deal. Just go, that's it. Those 12 guys go get off work, go train. But you can do that with more people, or you can rotate it, or you can do whatever. You just make it a part of the schedule. Now, here's a thing. This is kind of a libertarian idea, but we have labor laws, and labor laws are what prevent most of this, because labor laws dictate that your employer must pay you overtime after a certain amount of hours, and yet they need to schedule you to be on duty, to hold a post, do whatever it is that must be filled. It's a regulated thing, so it depends on the state. But like in a jail, or say within a county, if you're a patrol deputy or something like that, or even in a city, there must be so many people on. So there have to be so many people in the jail at the time. There have to be so many people patrolling the county. If you're in the city, there have to be so many people patrolling the city. Now, when it comes to being on the fully certified police officer with arrest powers part of it, you can actually get some of those numbers pretty low depending on the area you live in. Um, Unfortunately, on the jail side, it doesn't really matter. It's always the same, because you always have to have some sort of observation over the inmates and have certain things run. And that starts cutting into the budget and then overtime and whatever else. And often, imagine this, it's cheaper for them to run overtime and to hire more people. So they keep running overtime. It's just a matter of mismanaged, misplaced priorities. And I don't know about any of the areas you've worked in, but for me, there's often like a disregard for the staff, for the people in general. It's just like you're expected to show up, and you should be so lucky to have a job.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you care more about this pedophile or thief or murderer or rapist or whatever else it is than you do than the good people who have to put up with them all day long, or con artists or whatever in the world they are. Um, no, they're just drug addicts. I don't really care. I mean, yeah, they're wasting their life away, but they're not hurting anyone else really. They might be hurting their families emotionally. They might be doing certain behaviors that infringe upon people, but it's not the drug itself that I have the problem with. It's those other behaviors. So, yeah, man, it's like, why aren't you just getting extra training? Another thing we used to do, we would PT regularly. You got to have that physical training. A lot of law enforcement agencies don't have physical standards. Some of them do initially when you get hired, but after that, they go out the window. And no, if you're getting into a big city, you're going to have higher physical standards. But often it's just about who they can hire.
Yeah.
You get down to DC and Baltimore, man. You go about an hour east of where I live, and you get into the DC Baltimore area. They're hiring whoever they can get, whoever doesn't have a criminal background, whoever can meet the minimal standards. And it's kind of sad.
Oh,
And it's because
yeah.
they have so much crime and so much stuff that it's really horrible.
Yeah, some prisons, they're in need of staff so bad that if you just have a pulse and you don't have a criminal record, then they'll hire you. Now they're gonna hire you. Person is usually terribly out of shape. Not that I'm the physical specimen myself or anything, but just not in very good shape. Now you've got a guy who's not in peak physical condition, who may have to fight a bunch of guys, who gets one karate class a year and that's it. Like you're this is not how if you can't tell me that you want it to run well and then run it like this. Um it's awful. It's and you know what can you do other than find one of these bureaucrats and set up an office somewhere and smack them around and be like, this cannot be. This cannot. This is not how you sail a ship here, bro. You're gonna have to. We're gonna have to do something.
Well, what they're doing though is those bureaucrats also often think, well, what about the other programs that we can do? So, in a jail setting, it's what kind of rehabilitative programs can we do? What kind of parenting classes? What kind of drug classes? What kind of alcohol classes? Not to mention whatever is paid for by the state or the county or whatever. There are always volunteers coming in to offer these same type of classes. AA, NA classes, volunteers. You have volunteer chaplains. You have people that come in to that volunteer and run certain programs like this. And at the same time, they will develop these programs. Okay, well, that's a jail setting. What about in the actual society? Well, they're like, well, we're gonna build a housing project. We're gonna have public housing. We're gonna do these various things that they don't end crime. They actually make it worse because when someone doesn't own something, they don't respect it, they don't care about it. And these are the same people that, man, I've seen the gangster roles so many times. Used to run visiting. Dudes, guys that were released had been out, they went down to the state, they got out, whatever, came back. I knew the guys, they knew me. They'd be there visiting some other inmate buddy of theirs and whipping out their big old fat gangster wads, thousands of dollars in their hand, thousands, and never move out of the ghetto. Spend all their money on drugs and girls and their cars, having a nice pair of kicks. Um, and fine, man. If you want to live that life, cool, whatever. I don't know, but I've also seen stories about guys who are, drug dealers living that life, and they buy a house and they
Yeah.
they invest it and they do something with it. They don't keep living that living that life. So what do you think you're going to get when you give somebody who's like, oh, I don't really have to work? I've actually had guys tell me that. I've never worked a day in my life. One of our trustee, if anyone doesn't know, is like someone in a jail who has a job essentially. So they're trustees because you can trust them.
Mhm.
And they have different classifications. So certain people, depending on the nature of their crime, can go work outside without supervision, and are expected to return and that kind of stuff. Others are just allowed to roam around the jail. Um, but we had a guy who was a trustee, and he didn't have a hard job at all. Just had to clean up sanitation stuff, and in a very small unit, and got good days for it. And he said, "This is the only work I've ever done in my life." We're talking about a guy in his like early or mid 20s, never worked a day in his life because he just dealt drugs. So what does that involve? Oh, I got a dealer. I sit at my house and play video games all day. My boys hit me up on my pager. Yeah, you can come over to my house. You know? Um,
Yeah,
so it,
it's
yeah.
uh it's ridiculous. And I'm not against rehabilitation or anything like that. I think in some cases, a lot of these guys, especially like drug addict things, they do need something. But regardless of all the happy fun time rainbow programs you want to come up with, you've got guys that may have to fight these dudes. Like especially in like jails and prison settings, like you may very well have to fight with these guys. Now, do you want your officers to you know be equipped or not? Well, judging by the way these agencies act, they would just assume their officers get their heads kicked in rather than them do something that might look bad on camera. Um, and and
Well,
and, and some of it is shitty. Like there definitely are cases of officers going absolutely ham on for no reason, but you know if you're in the process of perhaps getting your entire face crushed in, and you think, oh, if I do some choke or something, some technique that I know how to do from jujitsu or whatever, do outside of work, then I'm going to get sued because I didn't act within policy. You're setting yourself up for disaster as an agency,
I went, so I worked for about a year at within the WVU hospital system as security. We had a lot of gear. I had not been through the full training yet that they had there, and I was essentially told to just be careful with use of force until you have the training, that kind of stuff. We had tasers. I wasn't taser certified yet there. First or second week I was there, there was an incident where a reserve deputy, which is weird to me that they even have that in West Virginia, but they had this reserve deputy who's like, I guess, an old retired cop, wearing a thigh holster that's not even strapped on properly, is escorting this guy in for mental health reasons, and we're taking him up to the mental health floor. Turns out he didn't even have the appropriate paperwork. But as this is going on, he's escorting the guy on his firearm side. So the guy kind of goes to grab his gun once or twice, and this guy was a little guy, and the deputy was a big guy, and my partner was a really big guy. In fact, my partner was like a 300-pounder. He's a big old kid, and they could not wrestle this 150-pound guy. He kept getting, and he was cuffed in the front. So, like, to my mind, that's like 1,000 things that you did wrong off the bat. And this guy who's 50 something and a reserve deputy who works in a rural county, who probably hasn't had to deal with much or whatever, is escorting somebody on his firearm side. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? So, anyways, we end up wrestling with this kid. This deputy's allowed this kid's dad to be with us as we're escorting him. And then the dad gets in the way. I have to straight arm lock the guy and drag him off the kid. We're wrestling with him. I do a few things. I ended up getting him in a cradle. And finally, my partner was like, screw this, and pulls out his taser and does a drive stun. Now, if you don't know what a drive stun is, people, it's when you take the taser directly into them. But the whole time, all I could think was, and I remember talking to my boss, I was like, afterwards, and he said, we're fine, we did fine, just write a little report, blah, blah, blah. But the whole time, I was like, dude, I was about ready to put my knee into the back of the dad's neck just to get him off. And it's like, but I don't know what you guys just hired me. I'm not about to get fired immediately because I don't know what to do with use of force. And that's what this is like. That's what it's like out there for people that work these kind of jobs. Now, the only reason why I even took this job was because I had been injured the year before. I hadn't worked for a couple months. I had to renegotiate my mortgage, and I needed a job, and it was a good paying job. It was paying me $20 an hour. So, with my experience or whatever, and I didn't want to go back into like security type stuff, but that's the stuff that happens. And then, same guy, same boss, whatever, pulled some shady stuff later on. I said, well, peace out. I'm not dealing with your nonsense. But try to tell me I violated someone's Fourth Amendment right as private security. And I'm like, doesn't apply to me, buddy. Not government. Doesn't work that way. You don't know the law. But anyways, yeah, and then when we had the use of force training, when they finally put me through like their yearly cert thing, it was kind of like what you said. It was like a nonsense class. It was nonsense techniques. The only thing that they really got into that was important for anyone who doesn't know is like stuff like, well, you can't strike with the side of your forearm, the bone. That's considered lethal force, which is stupid because it's a matter of how much force you put into it. But you can strike with the side of the forearm. Well, That's like saying I can choke you with the side of my forearm, but not with the knife edge of it, the blade edge. And as you probably know, that doesn't work out too well. You need to use that blade edge.
Yeah,
So
I've seen some ridiculous techniques. As someone with martial arts training, could you think of any instance in your entire life where you would have to drop down to one knee and punch somebody in the thigh? I mean, it's ridiculous shit like this. I'm like, why in the world would I ever have a hostile person in front of me and me drop down to one knee and punch them in the? Well, I'm not punching anyone in the thigh. Period. Like, it's not gonna happen, bro.
I've done strikes like that before, but more like experimental, like play, like when you're kind of sparring.
Yeah, yeah,
So I'm a big fan of like the Muay Thai type of traditional Muay Thai sparring where they kind of don't really go with contact. Same Muay Thai, the contact's all in the ring.
yeah,
Otherwise, what you do other than that's like flow sparring.
yeah,
So you hit a little bit, but it's not like what we do over here in the States where you put on a bunch of pads and then you get
yeah.
CTE just from training, which is really dumb. Um, but yeah, so like maybe if I had to roll away from something or I was on the ground before I got up, yeah, maybe. But it might be smarter too to just do a takedown.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna go down that, if you're gonna change elevation on somebody,
Right.
and that's what I didn't understand. I was like, you guys, and the other thing about it is that all these techniques are taught by semi-retired guys. Like they're all in their 50s, you know, and they spend more time telling you to make sure not to do something than to actually how to do something. And
But see,
a lot of it is kind of based on some jiu-jitsu stuff that I've seen. But the thing about it is, the thing that makes jiu-jitsu good, in my opinion, is that it teaches you to chain things together. Okay, you're gonna go for this. If this doesn't work, then you have this option. It gives you ways to build options. The way they teach it is, whatever technique we teach you is gonna work 100% of the time. So don't worry about anything else.
right.
You
And
know?
well, you might also get that from jujitsu with you said your coach is a catch wrestler as well because that's I've seen that far more from catch wrestling than jujitsu. Jujitsu, in my opinion, I know it's evolved a lot in the last 10 or 15 years, but in my opinion, it is overly sportified anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely
And
getting there for sure. Yeah.
yeah, and so um so like what is that? Keisagatame? Is that the scarf hold?
Hmm.
Yeah. So that comes from traditional jujitsu, battlefield jujitsu as a whole to control somebody that has a weapon. Well, you don't see Keisagatame anymore because, or hardly ever. Now there was just a submission this past weekend on the UFC with that, with a head and arm Keisa and a bit of a neck crank and diaphragm compression, which was sweet. I was like, yes, but because as a guy who's more or less been on the catch wrestling side of thing, that's the kind of thing that I would do. It's like, oh, okay, I might have the head and arm choke, but I'm also going to compress your diaphragm at the same time and try and crank your neck, and I'm going to get one of those three things. It's going to happen, or at least I'm going to make you really uncomfortable long enough for me to move into a better position. And anyways, I have a friend who has a school up in Maine. He's like a third degree, he might be a fourth degree black belt now in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And I mean, like way back, he got his black belt like back in the 90s. He's been doing it forever. And he like actually complains that he wants to do more combative stuff. And basically the way he runs a school is to teach the sportive stuff because it's what guys want to do. I mean, Eddie Bravo's brought this up. He created like the whole combat jujitsu league thing where they could slap each other and stuff because excuse me, guys doing jujitsu, they're not punching and stuff anymore. It's it's not as much about the combat anymore. Um and one of the things I was going to say too, though, like with kind of that mindset, and I was talking about with law enforcement, is back in the day, like in the '60s, probably up to like the mid '80s or early '90s, nobody cared what you did. Cops used to carry blackjacks, man, and they just a slap or smack you across the back of the head, and that'd be it. And so we've gotten in this pacified, nerfified societal world that the left seems to love, where these horrible people, because everybody who's been martyred, everyone who's been deified by Black Lives Matter has been a horrible person, pretty much. And I mean, if you can show me a case where the person was innocent and not just a troublemaker in general and not completely disrespectful, and like even Breonna Taylor, I don't know if she was a horrible person per se, but she was apparently sleeping with her ex-boyfriend, drug dealer, while involved with another drug dealer and on the warrant. So there's that. Again, I don't agree with the drug war, but that's a whole nother issue. And I guess my point is, those we're at this place in the world where it's like you can't do anything. It's like there'll be a point eventually. I mean, we're kind of there. We're kind of there where you're not even allowed to defend yourself. It's okay to attack and kill somebody if you have the right politics. It's okay to burn their house down. It's okay to destroy their business. It's okay to loot and riot. But if you have the wrong politics or you go against that right politic, then you're guilty. And your life means nothing. Your life literally is valueless because you didn't believe in the cult. And that's a really sick place to be at, but we're really getting there as a nation. And again, I hate to show for the man. It's a reason why you should vote for Donald Trump, honestly. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is, but a lot of these people that want to criticize the cops and stuff, I think they don't realize how shit rolls downhill. Um, I believe there's very few cops out there, or law enforcement or whatever, that just want to hurt people. But I do believe there's a lot of cops that don't know how to fight, um, or don't spend enough time practicing their unarmed combat, and then they spend more time shooting. They spend more time shooting than they do learning how to fight. So when you have a hammer, the whole world's gonna look like a nail. Um, and it's
what is that? But again, training, man.
Yeah.
Training is training is so important. You get in those high pressure situations, and it's hard to it's hard to get agencies to implement proper training. But then there's the psychological factor of things. Now, I'm a person with low fear. I don't really fear people. Um, but like I said, I'm just not wired normal. I and that's not a bad thing. So there have been books written on this where essentially you have someone like me who could have potentially, if I'd taken a bad path or didn't get the proper love that I needed growing up or whatever, I might just be a psychopath.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, I'm more of a sheepdog. I'm a protector, and so they estimate that that's about 2% of the population. Now, I don't know how large the population is of police officers, but I can tell you this: it ain't 2%. It's probably a lot larger, and 2% of people who are in law enforcement, because that's the other thing is you have to look at just any normal distribution. You'll see if you are of that mindset where you have a low fear threshold or high fear threshold, however you want to put it, where you just things don't scare you very often or much, especially people, confrontations, conflict, then those people are not all just going to be cops or all just military. And we know from studies and just examples of the battlefield that a lot of times that person with that threshold is the only one fighting. Now they've done some advancements in the military where they've been able to get more people to fight and join in, but traditionally that was the deal. In fact, I believe it's Dave Grossman who wrote the book on killing, and there's another book called On Combat about this. Now, I don't believe completely with Grossman's opinion because he says some stuff that's a little out there, and especially like the end of his book on killing, he talks about video games programming children to be violent, and I'm like, that's absolute insanity, man. Like that's some pencil pusher stuff.
Yeah.
Like Lieutenant Colonel, sorry, dude. Like I don't respect that stuff at all. But he also kind of leans left. But and the reason why I know that is because the thousands of hours of me drawing from a holster and going click, putting it back, click, or just dry fire before even shooting rounds or simunition rounds. The thousands of hours that we spent on the back in my day, it was called the ISMIT, which was the computer simulated video game that they used to train the military. Well, that's a whole different thing than me doing this.
Yeah.
You know, this and this is not the same thing as me going, boom, you know, put it back, draw it again, or having that, you know, if you have an M16 or whatever AR variant, whatever, and you're going bat 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 bat, and then you hear it run dry, and you go boom, right out. Not the same thing as playing a video game. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
you need muscle memory, guys. You need muscle memory. It's everything.
That's like saying
It's everything, and it will take over.
That's like saying you're going to win like a UFC championship because you played Street Fighter. You know, it's not going to happen.
Or the EA UFC
Yeah,
game,
yeah.
which I haven't played in a long time, but my buddy and I will play it out again. It's fun. I can never get the grappling system down, but that's I only played at his house. So, but yeah, you're not going to be a UFC champ on that. And then on top of that, you have to have so many other skills as an infantry guy. Like I had to know how to land nav. I had to know leadership principles so I could lead. I had to know hand signals to communicate with people. I had to know how to write a mission statement. I had to know how to do so many various things, and I had to be physically fit. And your life in the military like that is training. That's all it is. Now, I went initially into a security force unit, so I actually had a job at doing security. But guess what we did? We did our job, and then we did training as well. You know, we spent 8 hours on the fence line, and then we came back. We did PT or whatever. Sometimes we shot, and then we had a training week that was 3 or 4 days long. And I worked 10 days straight, and then I have like 4 days off. But that's how we did it. And they would send guys to schools. You know, we had a quota in our command for Ranger School. They'd send guys to Army Ranger School from us. That does happen, folks. There are cross military trained schooling. We had a school called HRP down in Quantico, high risk personnel, where they would train diplomatic security personnel. We had guys. My unit used to train with the Secret Service SWAT team. So you have all this various training. All you're not getting that in law enforcement unless you're like in the SWAT team,
right?
And even that, how much of that are you getting?
Yeah, the whole thing's a shit show. And like I said before, that's the problem with this whole debate. Maybe in fact we do need to militarize the police, but in a different way. They need. I think we both agree here. They need to spend more time training. Like I see nothing wrong with if you're working an 8 or 10 hour shift. All right, you're gonna go do I don't know Muay Thai for an hour. You're gonna do wrestling for an hour, and then you're gonna spend the rest of the time on post or whatever. That would be better than what they're doing now. This once a year karate class. And the whole time that you're doing it as an officer or whatever, you're sitting there and you're like, okay, here's my stupid blocks I'm going to learn. Like, you guys can't hire a high school wrestling coach to come in here and, like, we'd get more out of that than we would out of what this bureaucrat came up with.
Oh, yeah, man. Like, we have, I think he's in Frederick County, Maryland, which is like a couple counties away from where I'm at. Not that far. But we have a guy, Wade Shallis, legendary wrestler, has like hundreds or thousands of records, like no joke. Like you look up Wade Shallis. I had a chance to train with him a few years back. He mainly just trains children. But now and again, if you get the right people, you can get in and train with these people. And like Wade holds just an insane amount of records, like most pens, all this other stuff. But I went to this training with the people that I'm affiliated with, and I put it out there in an email throughout my department and well, I think the entire sheriff's department. So judicial, patrol, and the jail. If anyone's interested. My warden hit me back up and was like, "Oh, I haven't heard that name in forever. I remember Wade Chalice's name from high school wrestling or something like that." Excuse me. Nobody went. Nobody
Mm.
signed up. It cost, I don't even remember what the cost was, but it was nominal. And then we had 2 more days after that of training with Kevin Sikors, who did this training. I don't remember what the first day was, probably more basic stuff, but we did knife training, all kinds of stuff. And guys, knives are hard. Knives are very hard. You do not understand. I can promise you. The one thing I hate, and don't get me wrong, I've done it, but not necessarily educated. I didn't realize how uneducated I was. Let's put it that way. I was ignorant. But I hate when I see videos, especially like jujitsu videos. I've seen the Gracie brothers put out like just nonsensical knife defense.
Mm-hmm.
But they're like, well, this is how grandpa would do it. And I'm going to put him in a standing Kimura. And it's like,
Yeah, no, you're not.
no, you're going to get stabbed like 15 times, dude. That's not what's going to happen. But yeah, it's like you're only as good as what your training is. It is interesting you mentioned if you maybe it'd be a good thing for morale or something if police officers, patrol officers were, let's say you worked a 12-hour shift, right? So you're working 3 or 4 days a week. Maybe part of that shift you go and for like the beginning of the shift, obviously you have your little muster and all that stuff, and you get your little breakdown, and then you go on patrol for like 4 hours, and then you go train for an hour, do jujitsu. That's just on the clock.
Yeah.
And then you go do another like 4 hours, and then you go and you do another little like training thing. And so right there, you're 10 hours in, and you got like 2 hours left, and then that's like your last little part of your patrol. And obviously, you have like little wrap ups after that. Another issue with cops too, though, with all that is they have court appearances they have to make, and so that makes it a difficult
Yeah.
thing because they have to not just be on duty but also have court appearances.
Yeah.
But in any case, I mean, that kind of breakup might get your mind away from some crazy stuff. But I think a lot of it is they are underfunded, they are undertrained, they are understaffed. Um, they are not. They don't have good mental health counseling or anything like that. Seeing if a guy's burned out or not. I had suggested in the jail that I work in, or worked in, because I haven't worked there in some years now, but so we had a lot of cronyism, a lot of nepotism, but and the cronyism was especially if you were like a Freemason or something like that, which is kind of funny because that still exists in this area. In any case, um, we had special jobs essentially that if you had somebody that worked as what they call line staff, like you're in the units with people, you can maybe work that for somewhere between 6 and 10 years and never have to do that again for the rest of your career because there were enough special jobs that they could rotate people through, but we were small enough that they could rotate everyone through until the time that they retired. They didn't do that though. What they did was is they picked the people they wanted, they put them in special jobs. So maybe it was booking, maybe it was in our programs department. Um, who knows? Just maybe it was in our educational classes, the guy that ran that, whatever. But they would put these people in these special jobs and they would just keep them there for years and years and years and years. We had one guy, somehow he managed to get a special job just as the medical deputy. That's all he did for like 10 years, 15 years of his career or something. And not only was that all he did, but it was a daylight Monday through Friday job while everyone else had to work that rotating schedule. Now they eventually got rid of it, but like they still had someone running medical, but they rotated it like they did other posts. But my point is they would reward one person, and and you could literally you this is a leadership principle, guys. You could literally train your people to know more and do better because they know more about how things work within the entire facility if you rotated them out every 1 or 2 years to a new special job. So between promotion, people who were promoted, like sergeants, lieutenants, um, and all that, those were our main middle. We did have corporals, but that was our main middle management structure or lower management structure with sergeant and corporals. Um, until you got to the higher up positions, which were few and far between. With them, the higher up positions in the special jobs, 50%. I did the math on this. I looked at uh, our entire staffing. 50% of the people that worked there had a special job. What do you think that does for morale for people over the years when they have to run through concrete hallways, have their feet hurt by the end of the day, their knees hurt, their back, they have to wrestle around with people, they have to have inmates yell in their face, they have to go and clean up floods, might have, you know, feces or urine thrown at them. And you have these other people just coasting, just sitting around at a desk all day long. And air conditioning, mind you. Because we didn't have air conditioning in the units with the inmates. So
Yeah, I mean, it can be very much demoralizing. And to think, you might have this shitty day with no air conditioning and all this stuff go down, and then you have to fight a guy with your 1 day of karate per year, and now you're like, well, I just got my ass kicked, and we're understaffed, and everything that they told me was going to keep me from getting my face stomped in didn't work. So, it's why
yeah,
people
and you
get
don't
shot.
know either. By the way, folks, like you don't, unless you grew up fighting, like you don't know. I'm telling you right now. I've never been in a situation where I thought my life was about to be taken away from me per se, but I can say this. Unless you grew up fighting, you don't know what it is, what a real fight is, what it really means to have to try and restrain a person, and whether it is someone who's a patrol officer out amongst the streets or it's corrections. 90% of the time, the reason why people get control of somebody is because there's more of us than there is of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen, 110 pound women fight off 6'4", 350-pound men. I'm not joking. But they just could not get a hold of her. Like, this stuff happens, guys. You don't understand. And that's what I'm talking about, taking away the weapons or whatever. Like, you can't do strikes. It's a lot different, man. Like, again, I would punch someone in the leg, probably not like the kneel down, but I do it all the time. Charlie horse people get those good old two knuckles in there and
Yeah.
just got. So if you know where to hit the nerve and all that, and it sucks. And if you're accustomed to it, if you've been hit there a lot, it's one thing. If you don't train, you're not accustomed to it, it's not fun. It's not fun. And so yeah, there's just stuff that they could do, they could allow, but it's about, well, how's it look? What's it look like? Is there going to be liability of this? Are we going to get sued? Is this going to be in the paper? Is it going to be too public? Is it going to be this or that? It's like, as Joe Biden would say, come on, man.
Come on, man. Yeah, I mean, that's really the problem. Is it could very well be a cultural issue. You got someone sees you triangle choke somebody on camera, they think it's the most like lethal thing in the world or something. You're like, well, yeah, that was a better option than what I could have done, and I did that so I didn't have to do something else. Oh, you choked him. Well, yeah, I did. I mean, it is what it is. What do you want from me? You'd rather me drop down on one knee to try to punch him in the leg and then get my face kicked in? Like,
I mean, well, here's the thing, man. I've done training like say knife training with some gear on, and where we had like face shields, so you can actually stab toward the face without injuring the eyes, or whatever. But it gives you an idea, and again, that's that stress or whatever. But it's like I've been in those situations where doing whatever, wrapping up with someone with a knife, and then we're on mats and stuff, and the only thing I have left is I'm taking the guy's head and going bam, bam,
Yeah.
bam into the mat. But that's the brutality and reality of a life or death fight. Are you willing or wanting to go home? Now, my answer to this generally is I don't want to be in the fight. I'm not going to be in the fight. If I'm going to fight you guys, like, just be aware that I am willing to go to that final level. And that's the only time I think you should fight as a regular citizen, person, whatever. And I would generally say I'd rather just turn the other cheek. I think that that's the most moral thing to do. Unfortunately, a society cannot function like that, though. We can't have cops going, "Oh, you broke the law. Let me just turn the cheek." You know, "Oh, you just murdered somebody. Let me turn the cheek." "Oh, you just raped this little kid. Let me turn the cheek." And we have to have protectors, and it, yeah, more training, like more psychological support for these police officers, more money. You get a higher caliber person in. They really law enforcement should be like paying triple what it pays. Um, and I know, I know that it is a low skill job technically, but it's a high stress job, and that's where the money should come in. And also, if you want to get good caliber of people, because on average, depending on where you live or work, you might be making $60,000 a year if you get promoted, $90,000 a year. So yeah, that's a pretty good income. I mean, that's not terrible, but like, well, what are you risking though? Like, what about your sanity? What about your health? What about your family? What about all the other things? What about being ostracized by the community because we have this ridiculous movement going on right now? And I'm not a thin blue line guy either. I'm uh I'm not anti-cop. I just think that we need to have a long conversation about what's actually going on here. And I'm totally against police brutality. Very much against the drug war, very much against the militarization of the police. I think body cams was one of the best things that came out because I think I've seen far more officer friendly since that's happened. Um, but then you have poor leadership, these poor administrations, bureaucracies, whatever else. You people that never been in a fight before. I mean, how many times I screwed around with somebody way back in high school when I was doing martial arts, and somebody would be like, "Oh no, whatever, man, you can't beat me up." Used to do this in the Marine Corps a lot, and I'd be like, I'm not saying I can beat you up, dude, but I don't think you understand. Like, I've been training for like 5 years now in like legitimate martial arts, like kickboxing, that kind of stuff. Like, oh, and then they're like, come on. And then like throw something, I'm like, pop, boom. And, and they're like, oh, wait, man, stop doing that. And I'm like, well, I try to tell you. And then, you grab them up, you clench with them, you do whatever, and you just own them. It's like anybody, just go to a jiu-jitsu school. Just go to a jiu-jitsu school and go roll around with the blue belts who are basically like the nobodies. Like you could say the white belts are, but a blue belt's going to be able to own you. I promise. If you never rolled before.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a humbling experience when you go in there and, oh yeah, I know how to fight. Whatever. Nope, you don't know anything about this. You don't even know, bro.
Particularly gi, man, because I'm not a gi guy, and that's a whole nother game
Yeah.
changer. But yeah,
Yeah, I just started that and I was like, oh wait a minute. I now have a rope right around my neck, so this is
yeah. But if you learn the gi well, you can choke people out with their t-shirt.
Oh
If you
yeah,
know how to
yeah,
do
for
that right.
sure.
So I mean, um, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, but let's leave it there, man. It's 9 o'clock, and
All right, sounds
we
good.
should be getting out of here. So,
All right.
all right, folks. Well, I hope you all have enjoyed. We didn't have a lot of live viewers today, but we do always have replays. We are here every Wednesday night on D Live at ins_justify_memes. Replays over on YouTube, the ins justify the memes. And with that, hey, just remember those ends always justify those memes. Play that outro, Tank.
I'm talking about all the way to the top, yeah. Unjustifiably in a position that I'd rather not be in, but the cream will rise to the top. Oh yeah, macho madness, yes, got me.